Hello everyone, welcome back. So we are waiting for another speaker to join us in. Hope you guys are doing great today. Just give us a few more moments, yeah? In the meantime, do let me know if I'm clear, if you're able to listen to me or hear me clearly. If there's any issues, please do let us know in the comment. Okay. All right. Thank you for everyone who are joining in right now. So once again, I hope you're doing great. Yeah, please do let me know if you're not able to listen to me or anything. If it's not clear or anything, please do let me know. I hope so far it's good. And we're just waiting for another speaker to join us in. Just bear with us for a couple more minutes and we will be starting shortly. So I'm wondering if you guys are aware of today's topic. Well, allow me to introduce the topic for today is toxic positivity. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with these terms. Do let me know in the comment section if you're familiar with it, or if you're not sure what's that about. I mean, I know it can feel weird, right? Because when you talk about positivity, well, it's positive, isn't it? But why is it called toxic? So pretty interesting, isn't it? So let's keep wondering, keep having your, curiosity flowing. So we're going to address on why and what makes it toxic sometimes. So yeah, when you think about positivity, it isn't always positive. So that leads to our topic today, unmasking the dark side of positivity. So we're going to do that shortly. We're still waiting for the other speaker to join us in. So bear with us. Looks like they're having some issues, but hope it will be resolved soon. So really appreciate your patience. Just bear with us for a couple more minutes and we will begin shortly. So in the meantime, for whoever is already familiar with toxic positivity or some toxic positive statements you might have heard of, why don't you guys share with me in the comment section? What are the things that you would have heard that feels like this could be toxic positive? It's okay if you're not sure, but if you're familiar, you can just let us know in the comment section what are the things that you've heard about toxic positivity or certain toxic positive statements that you're familiar. You can let us know. So our speaker is here.
Yeah.
My co-speaker is finally here.
Yeah.
Hope everything's fine on your end.
It's fine now. It's not fine just now, but
Okay.
it's okay to be not okay. So yeah.
Yes, we'll begin
Okay.
on that note.
Okay. We'll begin on that note. Yeah, because it's something that we are going to talk about very constantly during this topic. Essentially, like we said, we're going to talk about toxic positivity. So maybe if there's anything that came across your mind as you talk about this topic, feel free to leave it in the chat as well, and we'll attend to that later. Yeah. So about what is toxic positivity, I think a lot of us might have encountered such a situation before, where after we shared about our problems to some people, we receive certain feedback like, oh, just stay positive. There's no point in feeling bad. You shouldn't feel that way. So any stuff like that. And essentially after us sharing, we regretted doing so because it actually causes us to feel way worse than when we haven't shared it yet. Yeah, so these are some signs that we are receiving toxic positivity, and of course, Naudi will be talking about the signs in a more extensive manner later on. And things like this can happen very commonly in our everyday life, mostly because we are unaware of how statements like this can be harmful for us and for other people. But before we go deeper, maybe we want to understand more about what is actually toxic positivity first. So toxic positivity is the belief that a person should only contain pleasant emotions. So only pleasant emotions like joy, happiness. At most you can include surprise, but not sad. Definitely not anger.
Nope.
Those unpleasant emotions. No. So
So
this
no,
is
no.
yeah. So this is for toxic positivity, and basically it's a bit unrealistic because it stressed people to remain positive because of how difficult or distressing the situation actually is. And it is a belief that basically says everyone just needs to stay positive in order to deal with the challenges in life. And while we know that optimism and hope are important in helping us to pull through tough situations, having positive thinking, which is our ability to identify positive aspects out of any unpleasant situation, is very different from being toxically positive. So you may ask, how are they different? What's the difference between positive thinking and also being toxically positive? So having positive thinking involves recognizing that we are in distress and allowing ourselves to experience unpleasant emotions, even if they are uncomfortable to sit with. Toxic positivity, on the other hand, involves the behavior and idea of disregarding our unpleasant emotions. For example, a toxically positive person may say, don't feel sad or you shouldn't feel that way, which can actually make a person who is in distress feel way more
Mm,
worse actually, because by saying those statements, it is the equal of asking a person to do something that's impossible, considering that behind all of our emotions, there are many reasons for why we feel in certain way. While positive thinking can help us to grow and increase our resilience towards facing challenging situations, toxic positivity will limit our growth because it can cause us to run away from our unpleasant emotions and our problems, being in avoidance, being in denial, and doing so can only serve as short-term kind of strategies for us to cope with hardships, because they limit our opportunities to learn, to
mm,
manage our unpleasant emotions and also situations. Yeah.
yep.
And so adding more to that, while we can regulate and manage our emotions, oftentimes we could not control how and when they arise. We
Mm-hmm.
can't control the times of when to experience certain emotions, as if we just couldn't control the heartbeat that we are having with us. And it's just basically impossible to have it stop and pump as we like. Though yes, we may regulate our heartbeat with the activities that we do, but that's called a regulation, not a control.
Mm,
And it's the same for our feelings as well. While we may regulate them, we can't really control them. And if you think about it from a survival point of view, the automatic activation of our heartbeat and our feelings serves important purpose, which is to allow us to know if we are in any danger, and if so, we can respond accordingly to ensure our safety. Being
right.
toxically positive, on the other hand, when we tell ourselves or tell other people to not feel bad, as this feeling of that being unpleasant, this feeling of sadness or anger came out of so naturally, it's the same as telling them that we should not respond to the danger and saying that we should run away from problems. And you may also regard it as a way to only deal with the symptoms itself, but not the actual root cause of the problems, which of course cannot serve as a long-term kind of intervention for us to live a life that is enriching and meaningful. So
Yeah.
being toxically positive diminishes the significance of our unpleasant emotions as it limits our potential to learn to become more adaptive to difficult circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent example that you gave earlier, right? Because it makes more sense when you put it that way. Because, like for example, if you're fearing in a certain situation, you're having anxiety, or you're just feeling anxious, basically. Now, these are one of the emotions that always termed as negative, or or being weak because you're being nervous over something that may seem small to you but not necessarily for the other person, right? So, and that's why in anxious moments we feel those heart rate raising. So how do you control that? And so by being toxic positive at times and saying certain toxic positive statements, it's like asking them to control that heart rate, which doesn't come naturally. You can only regulate, as you put it earlier, but how do you control it? So this is where sometimes the things that we say that we think is helpful for the other person isn't actually helpful. So
Mm.
today's conversation is going to be about that, recognizing when the things that we say are actually helpful and when it's not really helpful. So trying to differentiate that, knowing when something's not helpful and what are the things that we say with good intention may not necessarily mean it is actually helping the other person, basically.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
And I guess it happens a lot. nowadays because we live in a very fast-paced kind of environment that
Yeah.
everything is just about having problems. Okay, we solve them. So right now the attention is more driven towards like solving the problem itself rather than us actually attending to the feelings that came out of the situation as well. And yeah, of course, later on we're going to talk about more about like why do we um, do toxically positive stuff or like say toxically positive statements to other people.
Mm.
And a huge part of it is that, we say stuff like, just look at the bright side or stop crying. There's nothing to be upset about. It's because that we're thinking that, these problems can be solved if only we are able to attend to the positive perspective, which of course may be logically true and it makes like, total rational sense. And we're saying that with good intention, like you said just now.
Yeah.
But then doing so and saying stuff like this could also actually make us to unintentionally invalidate and neglect the feelings of others. And yes, being rational and logical is important, but then what about our emotions then? Does it mean that we should neglect our feelings and just be fully logical then? Does it mean that, our emotions are not as important as how we think then? Maybe not. Maybe we would want to validate both the emotional and logical sides of us. We might want to, have that kind of balance so that we are not dysregulated or detached from our own inner experiences. So sometimes if we go too much into our problem solving mind and if we are not mindful about it, it's also easy for us to misunderstand that helping others equals to using whatever logical reasonings to analyze the situation and resolve the issues while we misunderstand that emotions are our obstacles
Mm.
and which at the end of the day causes to become toxically positive even though it is unintentional from our standpoint and we are not even aware of it.
Yeah.
And this situation is also relevant to us having our savior complex as well, which basically is the belief that we are responsible for saving or assisting others. And the
Mm.
way for us to uphold this complex is then to give suggestions on how to resolve their problems. But it is also easy for us to forget to acknowledge their unpleasant feelings and become overly focused on giving our ideas on how to resolve their issues. And in such a situation, we might, unintentionally say out words like, just stay positive, which could also be a form of being toxically positive to the other person as well. And
Yeah.
another reason could also be due to our very regular discomfort in sitting with unpleasant emotions. And this is common for a lot of people, especially in our culture as well. Because in this culture, we are conventionally being told that unpleasant emotions are bad. Like I said just now, sometimes we frame feelings like sad or anger or disgusted as being like negative emotions, and it give them a very negative connotation on like
Mm-hmm.
if you are feeling in such a way you are doing a bad thing, but it's not necessarily that. And somehow along the line we learn to not express them out in any manner, and as the time goes on we develop the tendencies of like we stop ourselves to express this kind of emotions, and also we stop others to express their sadness, their anger as well,
Yeah.
and we call these acts of like expression as being spreading negativity.
Mm.
And we reason that anyone should not do that because we believe that no one should exert negative energy into our
Yeah.
environment. But really,
Yeah.
when we think of it, it's about our own inability to process unpleasant emotions, which is quite sad because for the most of us, we've been taught in that way throughout our upbringing, causing us to become intolerant to processing unpleasant emotions with others and with
Exactly.
ourselves, which can actually be so therapeutic and so helpful for us and for anyone to become better. Yet somehow we still develop the unrealistic mindset that
Mm.
if we disconnect from our unpleasant feelings, life will be great. Yeah, which at the end of the day, it gave rise to toxic positivity and causes us to run away from our problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called being in denial.
Yes.
Actually, that's what in reality, that's what you're doing if you really think about it, right? And again, here's the thing about this whole conversation of like negative emotions, terming emotions as negative or positive. I personally don't agree with that because emotions are emotions. Some are pleasant, some are unpleasant, and we feel all of them. That's how we are made. Humans we come with these emotions, right? Just that some are unpleasant, some are pleasant. But when we term it as positive or negative, it gives this connotation that, oh, these are acceptable, these are not acceptable. So yeah, that's where it's, the way we term certain things can be problematic as well. And think about it in medical terms. Positive in COVID cases, it's not a good news. So
Yeah.
positive isn't always a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? So cheers, we're here to recognize when it's unhelpful, when it's not really great, right? So let's just try to neutralize certain terms and not to put things into just like black and white lah. Basically, these are positive, these are negative. So anything that's negative, we need to move away from it, because in reality you're probably just being in denial or just pushing things aside, which is not really productive if you think about it, right? So yeah, while as we are speaking about this, I have to admit there has been times in the past before I understand about these things. Along the ways, I may have been toxic positive as well, but it's okay, right? We are all learning, and here's our opportunity to learn about it as well. So learning the signs can be helpful for us. Signs of toxic positivity, I mean, will be helpful for us. One thing is to refrain ourselves from being that toxic positive person to others, and also to ourselves, because sometimes we can do those things to ourselves as well. So here are a few ways to recognize them, because it's very tricky to recognize them sometimes, because they come in disguise of positive statements. It sounds positive, but whether or not it's right, whatever that you hear from others, when you, for example, when you're talking about your problems to someone, and from whatever response you get from the other person, try to see if what you're hearing is making you feel guilty, or making you feel small, or feel silly for feeling your emotions, or even having those big emotions, so to speak. And sometimes it can also, certain statements can make us feel like, our problems are not big enough, or serious enough, or even worthy to think about, because others have it worse, for example, or maybe whatever the person that you shared to, sorry, maybe they have been in similar situation and they just handled it better. So that we are being weak, or we are not strong enough, perhaps. So these kind of are the signs, actually, if you're feeling small, because everyone's experience is unique, and it's really not to make it between problems. Like, your problems is big enough for you, it when you put it alongside of the, or the first place, because you are affected by it, and you're affected deeply enough that you feel the impacts of it, right? So it's not going to be helpful for you to just suppress it or push it aside because it feels like it's not big enough, or because others have it worse. So these are the signs, actually, if you start to feel like your problems are not serious enough, and you're starting to dismiss them, and or you start beating yourself up for feeling that way, when it's completely understandable. If you really think about it, it's completely understandable in a situation that is difficult enough that you're feeling those big emotions. So, which is why we are emphasizing a lot on normalizing that it's okay that you feel those emotions, actually. So once you notice a habit in you, or a pattern in you, where you start suppressing or you hide your emotions altogether, or when you notice that you're not expressing yourself fully, you're like sugarcoating certain things, or you're just like, you're saying, oh, you know what, it is what it is, it's okay, I'm fine. So you're not actually, you know, being truthful about your emotions. That's a really strong sign, right? That you're not being truthful about your true emotions that you're facing underneath. You're actually just sugarcoating things and saying things in a more positive way because you want to be more positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the signs, actually. So what happens is, when we start doing this with ourselves, it also becomes to a point where we internalize these things, right? And we start doing this to others as well. We start dismissing other people's painful experiences. And when they reach out to us to talk about their problems, and notice these things as well, because sometimes we can do it. We can be dismissive of their experiences. We can, even we may not say it out loud. Sometimes we can think to ourselves and like, oh, is your problem bigger than mine? I have it worse. Now, these are the things, if you think about it, it's like gaslighting, not just gaslighting the other person, but when you yourself are going through your emotions, you can also gaslight yourself. So what's happening here is that we are stigmatizing these unpleasant emotions when they're just part of our life, but we are stigmatizing them. We are terming them as negative. It's not acceptable. So push it aside. So that makes me wonder, so how are we going to go about life when these things are normal, but we are stigmatizing them? We are making it a negative thing to experience, right? So how is it helpful for us or even all of us within a society? How is that going to work? Something for us to think about, actually.
Something we just feel, that isn't right. Something is just, there are things that are still left for us to process, but then, because we put that away, we didn't even know what that is at the end of the
Mm,
day, which basically perpetuate the whole situation and perpetuate the whole problem and cause it to maintain. Yeah. And, it could be problematic if, we constantly become that toxically positive to others and, not even mentioning to others, like even to ourselves as well. It
yeah,
could be very problematic. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. So we've been talking about how toxic positive can be problematic and also why it's problematic as well, right? So yeah, these are the reasons why actually it's really not helpful. So now that we know this is problematic, it's about now looking into how not to be toxic positive then. So any points you would like to add more on to emphasize why it's problematic for those who are, still joining and, to re-emphasize why it's problematic?
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, of course, there are still things that, if you may, I would like to share more
sure.
about. Yeah. Yeah, so I think another point is that when we see this from a connection level, a relational level between people and people, it also would sort of like avoid authentic connection with other people as well. Because if we are constantly avoidant of sitting with unpleasant emotions, sometimes it might also result in us wanting to run away from not only just problems, but also running away from the people who are having the problems.
Mm,
And a way for us to do that is, like you said, sometimes we deny, reject, or ignore other people's feelings. And, at the time that they are sharing with us, which might result in the situation where we only build and remain that kind of like very superficial connection that, gives
yeah.
us only pleasant feelings. And when we think of it, it's not quite that realistic and it's not quite authentic because life is filled with ups and downs. There are pleasant and unpleasant moments, but if we selectively choose to only have pleasant moments, are we living in a life or like just sitting with people who are real in that sense, and yeah, and if such a tendency is generalized to even larger societal level, it can cause stigma to happen as well, like you said just now, where people basically label having problems or even sometimes having mental disorders as being sick, which
Mm,
is actually a barrier for us and for our community to build an environment that is empathetic and supportive. As we said, relationship isn't just all about sharing positive emotions, but it also contains of sitting well with unpleasant emotions because life is filled with different kinds of emotions. And it is the capacity for us to sit with each other's feelings, regardless of these feelings being the pleasant ones or the unpleasant ones, that gives us the opportunity to flourish in terms of like our connections with others because it helps us to grow. It helps each other to grow. Yeah. And it leads me to the next point as well, because if we are constantly dismissive of our unpleasant feelings, it also inhibit our ability to
mm,
learn to deal with problems because we just constantly run away from them, and the next time when we face with the similar situations again, we might just run into the same cycle because they never
yeah.
attempted to learn to solve the problems by implementing changes in our minds and our behaviors and actually attending and focusing on our emotions and processing them. And all of this which resulted in us, having improper communications regarding our problems and even regarding our mental health can have very lifelong impact because we might get used to suppressing our feelings and avoiding our problems rather than accepting that while these feelings or situations are unpleasant, they are still things, they are still within our control and are within our power to try to make some improvements for life, which can be effective for our growth as we recognize that, whatever feelings that we're undergoing, they are all valid. So that's my add-on to, the how can toxic positivity become problematic to our lives. And so, yeah, and as we finish talking about that, and like there's nothing more that you would like to add on, maybe we can, now chip into the part where we talk about how not to become toxic positive
Yeah.
then to other people. Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely this will be like a burning question among those who are listening right now, and especially are just getting to know that how positivity can be toxic sometimes. So it can make you question like, so what am I supposed to say in response to someone who's talking about their problem? So am I not supposed to say anything at all? Like sometimes it can also make you feel like, oh my God, these days you just can't say anything without offending anyone. Now here's the thing, right? We are not talking about offending people. Actually, we are talking about how saying certain things in certain situations that we may have thought that, oh, it's helpful for the other person, but it's just not helpful in reality. Actually, it just makes them feel even worse. When your true intention is to help them feel better, right? But what's gonna be the point of it, you being as a listener, if you are not gonna say things that's actually helpful? Instead, you're just saying things that makes them feel even worse in actuality. So these are the things that we're gonna, look more into how not to be that person and instead help them in a more helpful way if that's what you want to do. So now this is gonna be tricky, but of course not impossible. So let's just start with ourselves then. So, we've talked about how toxic positivity isn't just got it's not just about like, being toxic positive to others, but sometimes we can do that to ourselves. We gaslight ourselves. So to prevent that, we always start with ourselves. Change begins with ourselves, right? So let's just start with ourselves. And it's gonna come with realizing and recognizing that being not okay is completely fine. As what we mentioned earlier in this session, right? It's okay to not be okay. It really is okay, actually. Sometimes this is how life is designed. There are ups, there are downs, and it's completely okay that where there are moments that it feels like there are more downs, and it's okay. This is how life is at, and that's where you're at emotionally at the moment. And it's not going to stay. With time, it will pass. That's where we can be hopeful that it will pass. But while you're still at that lowest of your lowest, even how we talk to ourselves is going to be extremely important. And this is what I meant by starting with yourself. So start noticing the things that you say to yourself whenever you're going through difficulties. How are you talking with yourself? Try and monitor those things. Watch the way you speak to yourself actually, and notice when with whatever you tell yourself, how are you feeling after that? Notice the emotions that comes up in response to the things that you say to yourself, and see if there are the signs of toxic positivity that I mentioned earlier. For example, whatever you tell yourself, is it making you feel guilty in return? Is it making you feel you're being weak because you're feeling those difficult emotions at the moment? Is it making you feel like your problems are not big enough or worth worrying about? So if it's making you feel that way, so that's a sign that you're being unkind to yourself. You're being toxic positive to yourself, actually. So let's start with recognizing them. We always start with the smallest of steps, right? So the smallest step would be recognizing them first, noticing them first, actually. So notice and catch yourself when you're doing it. Catch yourself when you're saying those really toxic positive statements to yourself. If you are saying yourself, oh, others have it worse, I shouldn't feel this way. Now that's a sign that you are being toxic positive to yourself. So change begins with ourselves. So let's start doing that. Recognize them, be more aware, and everything starts with realization. So once you realize, that's where you slowly decrease that behavior, and that's when once you stop being toxic positive to yourself, that's where you can stop being toxic positive to others as well. So this is going to come with recognizing the normalcy of difficult experiences in life. It's normal, it's part of life actually. So by doing this, we are actually making room for them, making room for these difficult emotions. I'm just gonna like demonstrate like demonstrate something for you. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of like the Chinese finger trap. Have you heard of it, Vincent?
Being a Chinese, even I haven't heard about it.
Oops.
What's the Chinese finger
Okay,
trap?
it's a Chinese. You can look it up later, but
Okay.
it's something like this, right? It's a
Uh,
finger trap where you put your fingers in, and when you try to pull out, it's gonna be so difficult. You're not able to.
mm,
So yeah, as it's pretty straightforward to as the name. It follows with the name like finger trap. So your fingers are trapped. You're not able to get it out, right? So my demonstration, the whole point of my demonstration is how toxic positive is an action of you trying to force your way out of it, right? You're forcing your fingers your way out of it. You're telling yourself, snap out of it. It's not worth it. Stop thinking about it. Just be positive. So all that action is you trying to,
yeah.
get out of that negative emotion. But what happens is that the harder you pull, the more difficult it is for your fingers to get out. So that's the act of toxic positivity right there. So we are emphasizing more on normalizing it, recognizing it, and seeing how that, okay, this is part of life, and we just have to sit with the discomfort and look at how we can get through it, look at the solutions that we can think of. So while you're doing that, that's the action of you slowly wriggling your fingers way out of it. So that's where it becomes the easier for you to get out of that trap.
Mm,
So think of
yeah.
toxic positive at that way. You're forcing yourself, and the harder you pull, the more difficult it is for you to get out of it. Instead, if you
Yeah.
take your time to slowly process that emotions, you're wriggling your way out of it, and it becomes easier. So that's what I mean by making room for those difficult emotions. And along the way, and therapy is one of the best ways also to learn to manage your emotions in a healthy way. So there are a couple of ways. For example, sometimes we can be afraid of like going down the rabbit hole if you were to think about your problems, right? You feel like you're going to spiral, so we choose not to do that. We just suppress them, avoid them. But you can set a time limit, right? You can take one or two vulnerable moments within the day or within the week to just sit with the thought that how difficult life is at the moment. And it's okay. Just recognize that, taking a moment or two for you to do that. And if you feel like you're dwelling too much into it, that's where you can set a time limit and tell yourself, okay, that's enough. I've worried about it enough. Now I'm going to look at what I can do about it and get on with your day. So of course there's layers to this, but this is just one of the ways we can process our emotions in a healthy way without dwelling too much into it or getting into that downward spiral of rumination. So this is something can be a separate topic of its own, and we'll see if we have time, we can definitely make it a different topic for another day. But these are one of
Yeah.
the ways actually. So now that you learn how to not be toxic positive to yourself, how about others? How can you not be toxic positive to others, right? It's by practicing empathetic listening. And we've talked about how to help people in a helpful way before this, right? So revisit those videos. They're up on our YouTube channel. So you can revisit those videos and learn more on how you can be more supportive to someone. So the key point is focusing on listening and showing support for that person. So even if that means you won't have anything to say, and that's completely okay. You can feel like you're not being very helpful for this person because you don't have anything to say, but that's really okay actually. Maybe that's what they need in that moment. So unless they ask for advice or they ask for solutions from you, try refraining from giving unsolicited advices. So, and I understand that sometimes it can be very unclear because we are not mind readers, right? We don't know what the other person is expecting. So it's completely okay to ask them if they are looking for solutions or if they just need listening ears. So you can just tell them that, either way, you're there for them. Just it'll be helpful for you if it's clear what they're looking for, and you just provide them what they need. That's it. As simple as that. Not complicated, isn't it? Yeah.
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 And I guess a lot of times that we are just not too mindful about the helpfulness of like clarifying with other people, and in many situations in our life we are just getting too used to trying to guess what other people is trying to tell us. So which is why a lot of times we would fall into the assumption that the other person is looking for solution, is looking for advice. But
Mm.
what if there are times that the other person is just looking for an outlet, and just looking for a listener without giving any sort of like judgment towards him or her.
Yeah.
And that's when as you said, when we want to like clarify with them about like what are they expecting out of this communication, and we could try to ask them like I totally understand about how you feel, and you could also say that, you feel a bit confused on like, how you should respond to that person, and, just listen to what the person has to say and see how the conversation has to carry on.
Mhm.
Yeah, because sometimes, it would just be great already if you could be able to like just sit there and remain with there and process the negative emotion, not the negative emotion, sorry, but the unpleasant emotions with the person. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, mm, so yeah, and I mean, it's understandable that while there are ways that we could do from ourselves to avoid being toxically positive to the other person to prevent from doing so. Sometimes it's hard to control whether or not people will do that to us because it's basically impractical for us to like control other people's words and control their behaviors. So sometimes we might still receive those kind of responses from them,
Mm.
and therefore it's also important for us to know what we can do or what they can say at least to really reply to them and try to make better um, situations out of there, basically. So one of the way which we can try to use is also by using assertive communication. For example, you may use like certain I statements in stating your concerns to them.
Mm.
So for example, we might say something like, I appreciate your suggestions on what I can do, but this is how I'm feeling right now. And when I'm asked to not feel bad about it, it's actually making myself feel worse because it sounds as though I should disregard my feelings. So we may try to take a step to tell others that it is not only about the problems that we're talking about, but also it also involves our feelings that are arising throughout the situation. So sometimes using such assertive communication, which involves the usage of I statements, it could give rise to the windows for us to talk with others about how we are appreciative of their responses, but there are things that we don't feel quite comfortable about,
Yeah.
and especially when they provided statements that invalidated our feelings,
Mm.
basically.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, this is us recognizing also that the other person is definitely coming from a good intention, coming from a good place when they say those things. It's just that there isn't, awareness basically about how unhelpful those things can be at times. So this is where we make an effort from our side. And in that process, you're also educating them on how those things are not helpful. So it's a good thing to do, not just for yourself, but also for others by stating how those things are actually not helpful. And of course, putting it in a very respectful way. You don't have to lash out on them. It's really unfair, right? Because they are definitely coming from a good place with good intentions. It's just that sometimes it's not helpful. So really making it a point, and also in that process, showing your appreciation for them, and also telling how what they're saying isn't exactly helpful for you at the moment. So it can sound something like, I know your intention is to help, but right now it makes me feel guilty when you say those things. It makes me feel like I'm being weak. So it's okay if you don't have much to say or if you don't know what exactly to say. I completely understand that, but I would, you just being here for me is helpful for me. That means a lot. So, and in the process, while you're saying how you're feeling, you're also stating what actually would be helpful for you. Just them being there present with you is helpful for you. So make that clear. Just let them know about it. So yeah, being clear about what you're looking for would help. As I mentioned earlier, right? We are not mind readers. So similarly, the person opposite of you or whoever you're sharing your issues with, they're not mind readers. They may not know what you're looking for. They might assume that you're looking for solutions, so they would give solutions. So making it clear, if sometimes solution is what you need, that's fantastic. You can let them know that, can you help me out with this? I would help. It would be helpful for me to have a different perspective on this because I'm trying to look for a solution here. So that's where expressing it would be helpful, and they would help you in the similar fashion. But if what you're looking for is just a place to vent, it's completely fine. Also, just make it clear to them so that they would know that, okay, this is what you're looking for, and that's all they need to do. Just listen. Yeah. So that's where communication comes in. Here, it's not just about helping yourself, but also helping others to help you in the way that you deserve. Yeah. Yeah. And I like about, sorry if I may add a quick point. I like
Yeah, sure,
what
sure,
you
sure.
said about how, sometimes it comes with, from our side, the best best we can do is to make that effort to communicate this, right? But sometimes it's not always understood because, fairly speaking, we have been in this um, society, or like the culture of like invalidating things and just, and we have the society has grown into this fast-paced fashion, right? So it's understandable that people don't get these concepts right away and they can still be invalidating to you. And that's where you can, choose to remove yourself out of that situation, and just understanding the fact that it's okay if that this person is just not there yet with regards to understanding how unhelpful toxic positivity is, and that's fine. You've done your best by expressing it, and even then it's unhelpful. It's fine if they're not understanding it. Sometimes we it takes us taking a further step by confronting or challenging whatever that they're saying, making them to really empathize with you, to understand, help them understand why it's not helpful. So it's completely acceptable also to tell them in a respectful way, again, to say how that you appreciate their thoughts and you see where they're coming from. But sometimes whatever they say can make it seem like what you're feeling is not unhelpful, right? Or unacceptable, right? So you can just respectfully let them know that, please don't tell me how I should be feeling in this situation, because this is how I feel truthfully. So you saying this is like invalidating my feelings. So you can actually confront that and challenge that. And by doing that, you're actually standing up for yourself. And that's okay to do that once in a while. Yes, it can come with feeling guilty. It can come with you feeling like you're being rude to the other person or offensive. But truthfully, what you're doing is you're just standing up for yourself, because some people can be outright harsh to you at those moments. And in those moments, it's completely fair for you to stand up for yourself by confronting those kind of toxic positive statements, especially the ones that are extremely harsh. Yeah.
It leads me to my next point as well,
Mm.
because I guess like the most important thing is for us to give ourselves that permission to feel our feelings and to constantly remind ourselves of that.
Yes.
Because sometimes even by using confrontation or using assertive communication, they don't necessarily result in the outcomes that we hope for. It doesn't necessarily change the behavior or the words from other people. So it's very important for us to reassure ourselves that whatever that we are feeling, despite how other people are seeing it, despite what other people told us, they are all valid. And if somewhere or someone that we have tried before does not yield us the kind of like positive results that we expected, maybe it could be the time that we look for other safer outlets or safer space to express our emotions. For example, coming in for therapy, and you may look for us for as well. Knowing that it is part of our job to process every
Indeed.
emotion that you're having.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while we discover together about like how we can move forward despite having this kind of hardships with you. Yeah, so it's another alternative as well to look for some other better outlets to process this. Of course, like not only just with therapists. If it's like with people, maybe there are certain people whom you don't find very comfortable in processing your basically emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there are also people other than the particular person whom you are getting used to talking about problem, but then constantly getting those kind of uncomfortable feedbacks from them. There are still other people whom could be available for you, and you can constantly try in finding the safer outlets in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm reading this comment that
Yeah.
says being invalidated. I've been there too. Toxic positivity is implied to shut people's ears. Yes, and
Indeed.
yeah, it's basically a very good way of putting it down, because it's basically a way of like we shutting down other people's feelings, we shutting off their feelings just as a way of like dismissing it, because in some people's mind it may be too accustomed to the idea of having unpleasant emotions equal to being bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which is why we do that. Yeah, sometimes. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And oftentimes it's also a projection of like us being uncomfortable with dealing with other people, or seeing other people going through difficulties. Or naturally it's uncomfortable, right? So sometimes we project that, and that's the projection comes in the form of toxic positivity. So now that we are aware of it, it's about doing our best to refrain from these kind of statements and also saying things that can be unhelpful for the other person. So that's going to come with reflecting a lot on whatever you're about to say, if it's going to make the other person feel guilty, or are you making this about yourself, like about how you share about your own experiences. Sometimes, yes, whatever the other person share can feel like, oh, I've been in that situation and this is what I did to help myself, but it may or may not apply to the other person's life, right? Because again, everyone's experience is very subjective. So sometimes it may apply, sometimes it may not apply. So recognizing that it's really important as well. So yeah, it's together. I think today what we can take away is that we have to be mindful with the things that we say, not just to ourselves but to also others in the process. And if it's in the along the lines of gaslighting, if you're getting a hint of gaslighting happening there, that's when you know this is toxic and it's not helpful for you. So we need to reframe that and put them in a more helpful way. So this is where we can get confused between acceptance and toxic positivity actually. Because the things that we say, for example, like positive vibes only, it can sound on the surface like it can sound like, oh, you're just being acceptive of your situation, but are you really acceptive when you say when you say positive vibes only? In other words, you're saying that you're only making room for positive vibes. There's no room for negative things. And again, as we talked about earlier, we always term emotions as negative sometimes, the unpleasant ones. So you're not making room for that. And this whole Chinese finger trap situation going on again. So catch yourself whenever you're doing it. So really ask yourself, are you being accepting in the situation or are you being toxic positive? Yeah. So there's a whole confusion that goes on with that. So maybe we can share one or two statements that can sound like toxic positive or can sound like acceptance. So how we differentiate them, right? You were gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to like comment about like how um, it takes a lot of like reflections for us to like really take ourselves away from this culture of being toxically positive. Essentially because like it's been such a long time since we learned to put away our unpleasant feelings, our unpleasant emotions. So yeah, of course, like it's going to cause a lot of confusion for most people as well. When in the first place we talk about how accepting and also how toxic positivity is two different kind of things, because people might regard them as being the same kind of thing, where
Yeah.
they will just think acceptance means like, or whatever comes, I just accept. I don't look at the negative side of things. Yeah, but it's not that case, because maybe like the example that we were going to talk about could be, toxic positivity is basically causing someone to um, feel bad for feeling bad. But on the other hand, acceptance is basically striving the idea that feeling bad is part of our life experiences, and it's the way of how we learn through processing all of these unpleasant emotions with us. Yeah, it could be one of the examples. Mm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So the key point here in differentiating acceptance and toxic positivity is that when when it's acceptance, it's more of like you welcoming those difficulties. You are also normalizing it and you're making it how you're recognizing the normalcy in these experiences basically. So it can sound like, this is hard right now. That's you just recognizing it. That right there is acceptance. Yes, it is indeed hard right now. So toxic positive, on the other hand, it will be like, no, I got this. This is not a big of a deal. There you go. So notice the difference, right? So yeah, it all comes with acknowledgement of how difficult certain situations are actually. So that's where acceptance, it can sound also like, this is hard right now and I don't have clarity to move forward at the moment. That's you again recognizing that you don't have clarity, and that's okay. By saying that, you are actually recognizing the fact that this is where you're at emotionally right now, and you're making it okay for yourself to be in that position, because like we said, life is designed in such ways, there are ups, there are downs, and it's completely understandable when you're at your lowest, you're feeling that way, that you don't have much clarity, that you're facing these difficulties, and that's okay. So comforting, and this can be accompanied with comforting words like, I will breathe right now until I have better clarity. I will breathe and allow myself to feel my emotions, and with time, this too shall pass. So yeah, these are the things that you can tell to yourself and also to others, actually, to tell them that I can see that this is difficult right now, and yeah, I'm here for you as you're feeling your emotions, and with time, hopefully, this will pass. These are the things that you can actually say. And when you really think about it, these are more comforting if you compare to those toxic positive statements like, look at the bright side. But yeah, ask yourself again, there isn't always silver lining to certain situations. I'll give an example. Imagine someone just lost a loved one. How's there a silver lining to that? How do you say things like, look at the brighter side of things? They're in a better place. You don't know that, right? So there are things that we think that we say will be helpful for the other person, but sometimes there isn't just a silver lining to a situation, and we just have to accept that there isn't a positive thing that comes out of it, and it's fine. It's fine that the situation sucks at the moment. It's okay. So by doing that, we are making space for those emotions. And yeah, we're just recognizing that these are just part of our life, and we are welcoming these experiences.
Yeah, as you said, the very simple solution to it is to really recognize that it's okay to feel these unpleasant feelings as they came out, because
Mm,
even if they didn't came out from place where it's intentional for us. Of course, these are unpreferred emotions, I would say. But then again, when they came out, it signifies something. It signifies the sad. For example, when you say like the example of like losing someone who's very dearly of us, the emotions of sadness signifies how much of love we have towards that person, and it's not arising because we just want it to happen, and it's a very natural kind of thing. So if we are to like put that away, it also makes us a bit inhuman, I would say. It
mm,
also makes us to very kind of like in a very kind of like awkward position in relating with other people, because it only feels right to do so. It only feels right to feel in that way as those situations arise. So
mm,
to put it simply, being toxic positive is basically avoiding like the unpleasantness. And acceptance is very different because it involves the recognition of unpleasant emotions as part of our life experiences, regardless of how um, difficult it can be for us to sit well with that. Still, they are the windows of opportunity for us to learn, to grow in future when we face this kind of similar situations again. Yeah, so basically acceptance is the striving of the idea that feeling bad is part of our life experiences, which carries empowerment and also opportunity for us to find our way to manage this difficult situation and to continue to move forward, basically. Yeah.
mm, definitely. Yeah. I just want to check in real quick. Are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
good.
I was just wondering if there's like any kind of distortion. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna say that, with this, I believe we can end on the note of how we can emphasize the fact that welcoming all sorts of experiences in lives, including the pleasant and unpleasant ones, is what is going to help us grow. Actually, I always like this quote of that says, pain makes you stronger, fear makes you braver, and heartbreak makes you wiser, right? So these are just experiences that are part of our life, and by welcoming them without resisting them, remember the act of the Chinese finger trap, right? You resisting it further, it makes it even difficult. So sometimes the way out of certain situation is through them. So how we go through them is by welcoming them without resisting them. And in fact, these are the experiences are going to help us to grow as individuals. And by recognizing this, we are also going to make this space a welcoming space for everyone. We are going to hold space for other people to do the same as well. So in that process, we are being safe people for others to experience their emotions as well. We are going to be a more welcoming yeah, when we start with ourselves, we welcome those emotions with ourselves, and that would expand to our closest circle, and hopefully that expands to being a society that is more empathetic and more understanding, and a society that welcomes this kind of difficult emotions importantly, safe for people to feel whatever that they're going through.
Yeah. And I wanted to also conclude this topic by striving that it is understandable that most of the times it is unintentional for us to act in ways or say words that could be toxically positive to other people. And I mean, it happened for a lot of us as well because we can't be correct or perfect all the time. Sometimes even, copying from you, even for myself, I might accidentally spill out some toxically positive statements. And I guess like a very important thing is for us to actively be mindful of the words that we use then as we're trying to help out other people, because we don't want to unintentionally put them onto harm as we are trying to help them as well. So while might not be able to fully negate from making mistakes, paying awareness to how we communicate with people who are in distress can also help us to find the right way to relate with them and to help them to address the problems accordingly. So I guess we can try to take small steps from now, start by having this sort of awareness first as we try to build environments that can be more empathetic and also be more supportive for everyone, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. So yeah, on that note, we will end the session shortly. If there are any questions, feel free to comment in the section, but comment in the comment section. Yeah. So yeah, I can see that there were people who were able to resonate with this topic today because yeah, there has been times that we ourselves would have felt invalidated when we share our experiences, and then we would have choose to not do that anymore, and we tend to shut ourselves off. We tend to isolate because we don't feel welcome. We feel like these things are not acceptable. But this is the opposite of it. We are going to try our best to make that space for ourselves and also for other people also. So I think one main thing to take away from today is to start those things with yourself and watch how you speak with yourself and notice if you're gaslighting yourself and try reducing that. That would be a good place to start, I would say. So yeah, that's it from my side. If there's nothing else, we can end. Vincent, anything from your side? Any last few words?
Someone just said thank you for the info.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to say, yeah, appreciate it. You're very welcome, and we truly hope that this topic can, become very helpful for you in moving forward. So yeah, thank you for the feedback.
Yes, thank you too. And yes, this video as usual will be up on our YouTube channel and we will be posting them soon. So just stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, stay tuned. And yeah,
We'll be
we'll
back
end
with
shortly.
yes, we'll be back with more interesting topics. So we are doing this live sessions weekly, and usually it's on Wednesdays. So yesterday it was a public holiday, so we had to move it to today. So just keep stay tuned for more interesting topics, and we are always welcoming feedback. And also, if there's any other topics that you would like us to discuss, feel free to let us know. You can message us, and we will definitely look into it. So yeah, thank you so much for those who attended today. Really appreciate your time and hoping to see you again soon. Take care till then.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.